They gave me the worst room on the family trip and laughed, saying, "You'll get what you deserve." I smiled quietly and waited. I'm Lucas, 28, and my family has this running joke that I'm the quiet one, which is their way of saying I'm useful when they need something and invisible when they don't. Growing up, I learned to take up less space, speak softly, and carry a mental notebook of who showed up and who didn't. I'm the oldest of three. My brother Ethan is the golden child who can do no wrong, and my sister Brooke is the diplomat who plays both sides like a hobby. Our parents, Mark and Diane, are the kind of people who narrate your life as if they wrote it. Lucas is practical, steady, not exciting, but reliable. You'd think being reliable would be a compliment, but in our house, it was a role that came with chores and a silence clause. The family trip was supposed to be a reconciliation of sorts. We hadn't really been together since my grandmother's memorial 2 years ago, where Ethan decided to deliver a toast that mostly congratulated himself on his recent promotion. That day, my father grabbed my shoulder afterward and said, "You just need to be more bold. You're always careful." I remember hearing laughter in the kitchen as Brooke told Mom, "Lucas is probably going to open a savings account to celebrate." I laughed along even then. Laughing has always been my way of moving past things without letting them plant roots inside me. The truth is, while Ethan and Brooke were collecting visible trophies, I was learning how to read people, how to make decisions without broadcasting them, and how to build something solid where no one could tear it down. This trip landed on a long weekend in late spring, the kind of weather that makes even grumpy people linger outdoors. We were meeting at a coastal town that my parents loved from their honeymoon days. Breezy boardwalks, weathered shingles, gulls that yell at you like they own the pier. The group was large: my parents, siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins, and a few people who always get called family friends, but whose names rotate unpredictably. The invitation came from Aunt Linda, who lives for group texts and uses an excessive number of ellipses, as if every sentence whispers a secret. "We found a great deal at the hotel," she wrote, "and they even said they could give us a discount if we booked as a group. We just need someone to put a card down for incidentals." 10 seconds later, "Lucas? You're usually good for that, right?" I typed, "Sure," because it was easier than watching the typing bubbles go quiet. Here's something my family doesn't know. I've worked quietly for the last 5 years consulting for small hospitality companies on operations and turnaround. I started with spreadsheets and late-night calls in a one-room apartment that needed both a humidifier and a fan. I did well enough long enough that a small fund asked me to lead a boutique hotel acquisition, renovation, rebrand, management, the whole package. It was a risk. I hesitated. And then one day I woke up to the exact sentence my father had been telling me my whole life: be bold. So I did it. We bought a tired seaside property with great bones and a view that could calm a storm. We closed off the books under a quiet holding company name, hired well, treated the staff like human beings with ideas, and spent a year making sure the paint wasn't the only thing new. I never mentioned it to my family, not because I wanted to surprise them someday, but because I wanted to keep one area of my life free of commentary. We arrived at the hotel lobby on a bright Friday, the kind of light that makes the polished floor look like water. The front desk staff greeted us with the smiles I never pretend to ignore. Hospitality is theater and hard at once. But before I could step forward, Ethan placed himself squarely at the counter. "Reservation for the Anderson party," he said, loud enough to declare something that wasn't his. He turned, winking at Aunt Linda like he had personally arranged the sunrise. The manager on duty, a calm woman with a pin clipped neatly to her collar, confirmed our cluster of rooms. That was when the room selection game started, a family tradition where seniority and volume decide who gets what. I called dibs on the ocean view with the balcony. Ethan said, spinning the keycard envelope between his fingers like a coin trick. "Brooke, you take the one next to us. Mom and Dad. Obviously you'll get the suite, king bed, and the soaking tub. Aunt Linda, you and Uncle Arthur should be on the same floor as the parents." The manager, politely amused, glanced at me for a beat. I smiled and said nothing. In my family, offering a challenge is like setting a place at the table for an argument. Aunt Linda clapped her hands. "Perfect. Lucas, there's a small room off the stairwell they said they could give us at a discount. We'll put you there. Saves the family a few bucks. You're so good with practical things. I'm not sure what it is about family that turns you into your childhood self in half a second." I felt that old heat in my face, that old urge to nod so no one had to shift. Sure, I said evenly. Stairwell room for me. My mother squeezed my arm like I just carried a box for her. You're a sweetheart. Besides, you'll be out and about, right? You don't need a view. Behind her, Ethan lifted his keycard like a trophy. I'll send you a picture from our balcony at sunset, he grinned. Brooke, who always wraps her comments in a compliment, added, it'll be nice for you, actually. Less noise from the elevators. Then she took the corner room with the wraparound windows. If you're wondering how a family convinces itself this is kindness, the answer is simple. They dress convenience as fairness and call it a family trait. We all took the elevator, minus me, to the 5th floor and watched doors close in unison like a synchronized swim routine. The stairwell did smell faintly like bleach and a hint of something metallic, maybe an old pipe. My room door opened to a bed that was technically full-sized if you ignored the way the mattress dipped toward the middle. The window overlooked a flat roof covered in white pebbles and 2 humming metal boxes. The bathroom sink was new, good, though the towel rack sat a fraction of an inch crooked bad. I noticed things like that. It's what made me good at my job. It's also what made me feel suddenly protective of this place, the way you feel protective of a friend who is doing their best for people who won't care. When I came back down, the family had camped in the lobby with iced teas. The jokes started gently. How's the maintenance suite? Ethan asked. Did they at least leave you a mop? Brooke laughed, but tried to make it sound like she was laughing with me, not at me. My father crossed his arms, surveying the room like he owned it, which is his favorite stance in unfamiliar places. It builds character, he said. I stayed in worse in my day. I knew better than to ask when. My mother added, it's only 2 nights. Aunt Linda leaned in conspiratorially. Anyway, since you're on the stairs, you'll get your steps in, she said, as if that made it a fitness perk. I nodded, because letting other people's words settle is a skill I have perfected. The group wandered to lunch. The restaurant was light and open, with plants that actually looked alive, small things guests notice subconsciously and feel as a sigh of relief. Our server recommended the catch of the day, and Ethan announced he would do the tasting for the table like he was a judge on some food show. I asked for the same dish quietly, and he smirked at me as if I'd copied his homework. When the food arrived, conversation turned to summer plans, Brooke's trip to the vineyards, Mom's gardening, Dad's ongoing war with the neighbor's tree. When it was my turn, I said, I'm working a lot this season. Aunt Linda waved her hand. You're always working. At some point, you have to live. I almost told her that work is how I built a life, but I didn't. It's hard to explain to people that responsibility can be a kind of freedom if you actually chose it. Small things piled up like folded napkins. At check-in, Ethan accidentally added room service to my incidentals. At the pool, my father used my towel because yours looks nicer and handed me a damp one in exchange. Brooke texted me from her balcony asking if I could grab her a spare phone charger from the front desk because you're down there already. In the afternoon, we took a walk along the boardwalk and stood at the rail while the ocean did its endless thing. My mother wrapped her arm through mine. You know, she said, you should be more like your brother sometimes. He just goes for it. I kept my eyes on the horizon. I thought about the contractors who worked nights to finish the East Wing on time. About the general manager who took a chance on me when I looked 21 and spoke like I ought to apologize for it. About every salary we raised because we wanted to do right by the people who make a place worth returning to. I do go for it, I said. I just don't narrate it. That evening, the plan was a family dinner in the private dining room. Aunt Linda loves words like private when she's part of the group allowed inside. She'd arranged a long table with place cards, her second favorite thing. Mine said, Lucas, Stairwell Suite, in her looping pen. Just for fun, she chirped. It's a memory. The room was warm with horn lamps and low music. The hotel staff had set things beautifully. Linen that actually felt like linen, water glasses with a precision fill line. The manager from earlier stepped in to confirm the wine choice, and Aunt Linda told her, we'll go with what my nephew picked. He has a good palate. She pointed at Ethan, who nodded like a magnanimous captain. I watched the manager remain patient, kind, professional. It made me proud and a little protective again. I excused myself and walked out to the hallway, just to breathe. Hospitality teaches you how to be invisible while making people feel seen. My family has spent years perfecting the opposite. In the hall, I texted someone I trust, our general manager, Adam. How's everything? I wrote, a normal check-in dressed as casual curiosity. Good. He replied immediately, because he is always paying attention. Full house tonight. Family group seems spirited. I smiled at the phone. I'm here too. I typed. Text me if you need me. When I walked back in, the room was louder. Ethan was telling a story involving a client, a boat, and a crazy weekend. And everyone was leaning back in their chairs, laughing in the way that says, tell us we are impressive for listening. My father reached for the wine bottle. Lucas, he said, be useful and pour. It was not a request. It was a choreography we all knew. I took the bottle. It was a good choice, actually, and poured evenly, resisting the impulse to correct for Ethan's light hand by giving him exactly the same as the person beside him. Our server brought appetizers, and as she set a plate in front of me, Aunt Linda leaned toward her. We stuck him in the little room, she said, head tilting toward me like I was an inside joke. But he's tough. The server looked at me and then at Aunt Linda with a small, unreadable pause. I hope you're comfortable, she said to me. Let us know if you need anything. Later, when the main courses arrived, Brooke decided to make it a toast. To family, she said, rising just enough so the chair legs made a soft scraping sound. To people who know you best. She looked at me when she said, no, and the table murmured in appreciation. My father clinked his fork to his glass. And to teaching the next generation to go for the best, he added. He nodded at Ethan's balcony photo from earlier, the sunset turning the glass into a triumphant little tile on his screen. Ethan took it from there. Lucas, take notes, he said, lightly enough to be deniable, sharp enough to land. There's an art to picking the good things. You can't be afraid to ask. It's a strange sensation to feel a place behind your bones stiffen and settle, like a ship adjusting to a hidden current. The thing about being quiet is that people confuse it with empty, and that confusion has been a soft moat around my choices for a long time. I looked around the table, the people who could make me 8 years old in a minute and call it love, and I realized I wasn't defensive or angry. I was simply done with a story I never agreed to star in. The manager appeared at the doorway, met my eyes for a half second, and I realized she was asking a question only I could answer. How much of myself do I want to put on the table tonight? I wasn't planning a grand reveal. I didn't arrive with a speech folded in my pocket. I had intended to get through the weekend the way I always do. Help, pay, disappear. But something about the crooked towel rack in the stairwell room and the way Aunt Linda turned people into punchlines stirred a line in me I hadn't crossed before. When dessert menus came, Ethan announced he'd put 3 on my room, since your rate is cheaper, and the table laughed like someone had lobbed a beach ball, and they were all obligated to keep it aloft. I set my napkin down. Actually, I said as calmly as I know how, there's one thing I should clarify. Brooke tilted her head the way she does when she thinks she's about to broker peace. Oh, my father leaned back, prepared to weigh in. My mother's smile held steady, the trained expression of a hostess. Aunt Linda clasped her hands. Yes. Even the chatter from the hallway seemed to dim, like the hotel itself was listening. I kept my voice even, the way I would in any meeting that mattered. The stairwell room rate isn't cheaper, I said. We don't have tiered rates by room here. Not exactly. We, Ethan repeated, amused. You mean they? No, I said, still very calm, still wondering if my hands looked steady resting on the linen. I mean we. I let that sit for a breath, then added, not loudly but clearly enough to reorder the air in the room. I own this hotel. For a second, nothing moved. No fork clinked, no chair creaked, no one inhaled sharply. Then 3 things happened at once. Brooke's eyes flicked from me to the manager at the door, as if triangulating truth. Aunt Linda made a small laugh that sounded like a hiccup, the sound people make when their story doesn't align with what's in front of them, and Ethan leaned back like the chair had decided to tilt. My father's mouth opened to say my name. Just my name, not a sentence yet. In the doorway, the manager's posture changed by a fraction, professional to attentive, and 2 members of security walked past behind her on their normal evening rounds, pausing when she held up a hand. The dining room temperature didn't change, but something fundamental in the space did, like scenery adjusting behind a curtain. I didn't look away. I didn't fill the silence. Years of being quiet had finally prepared me for this precise kind of quiet. the kind where you don't rush to make everyone comfortable. I could feel the questions freighted onto that calm. Was I serious? Since when? Why didn't I tell them? What did owning mean? Who, suddenly, had authority in this room? My father closed his mouth, then opened it again. Lucas, he said, softly this time, as if the name itself was new. On the far end of the table, Aunt Linda's hands slowly unclasped. Ethan tapped the bottom of his glass with one finger that didn't tremble but wanted to. The manager stepped inside at last, directed her words to the table, and still, somehow, only to me. Is there anything you'd like us to do, Mr. Anderson? She asked. The room absorbed the title like a drop of ink in clear water, color spreading in undeniable lines. My mother's posture shifted, 100 memories recalibrating behind her eyes. I rested my palm on the table, feeling the grain beneath the linen, feeling the building I loved, the team I trusted, the dozens of choices and repairs and kindnesses that made a place more than walls. I glanced at the two security staff waiting just outside the threshold, attentive and ready, then back at my family, every face reorienting to a reality they hadn't planned for. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. First, I said, the staff is not a prop for our jokes. We don't comment on a guest room choice like it's a party game, and we don't make a server feel small because we're trying to impress one another. That's not how this house runs. The word house made my father blink, like the floor plan he held in his mind had just been redrawn. Across from me, Brooke's diplomatic smile thinned. Lucas, you know Aunt Linda was just teasing, she said, gently, the way a person tries to blow out a candle by fanning the air. We're all having a nice time. Ethan tapped the stem of his glass. Yeah, man. You own the place? Cool. So get yourself a better room. Put me next to the stairwell. I can handle it. He laughed like he'd just offered a noble sacrifice he knew would never be accepted. The manager waited in the doorway with the patient attention I knew well. It wasn't deference to me. It was deference to process. She was also reading the table for the first sign this would tilt from awkward to unsafe. I turned to her. Could you have Adam bring the incidentals ledger for our group? I asked. And the service team's notes from this afternoon. She nodded and stepped back out. Ethan's eyebrows went up. Ledger. He laughed. What is this, a courtroom? He looked at Aunt Linda for a smile and got one that didn't quite reach her eyes. We don't need to make this formal, Aunt Linda said. We can just move some things around, right? Switch rooms, add a dessert, call it even. She reached toward my plate as if to demonstrate adding something. Her bracelet clinking lightly against the china, a sound I had heard my whole life that always meant a conversation was about to be steered without anyone admitting it. My mother, to her credit, was quiet. She watched me the way you look at a photograph you've seen 100 times and suddenly notice a detail in the background that's been there all along. My father, however, straightened in his chair, the old command posture. Son, he said, we're not doing a performance here. He gestured toward the hall, as if the hotel itself were a theater that had gone off script. You should have told us. It's not right to spring something like this at dinner. I let that one pass through me like wind through reeds. I didn't spring anything, I said. I corrected an assumption. There's a difference. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He didn't have a category for that sentence. Adam appeared with a leather folder and a small notepad, crisp as always, every line of his suit saying ready. He set the folder by my hand, but addressed the table. Good evening, everyone. I hope you've been enjoying your stay so far. He meant it. That's the part that always mattered to me, meaning it. Per Mr. Anderson's request, I've brought a summary of the group incidentals, as well as today's service notes. I'm happy to review them with you, or handle anything privately. The word privately hung in the air like a rope we could choose to grab. Aunt Linda smiled brightly at him. No need for all that, she said. We trust you. We can sort things among ourselves. She glanced at me, a small warning wrapped in charm. Right, Lucas? I opened the folder and skimmed the afternoon entries. The housekeeping call for extra linens at 2:14 p.m., the room service charge at 2:32 p.m., the additional minibar restock request at 3:05 p.m., the poolside towel discrepancy at 4:11 p.m., and felt my jaw unclench not in anger, but in relief. It wasn't the money. It was the predictability. Patterns are easy once you stop pretending they're complicated. I'd like to handle this here, I said, closing the folder lightly. There are a few misunderstandings I'd like to clear. Ethan snorted. Misunderstandings? So I ordered wings to your room as a prank. Big deal. You own the place. Consider it, like, brand testing. Adam didn't flinch. For clarity, he said, the room service order was placed from the main suite's phone and requested to be billed to the stairwell room. When our team asked to confirm, the caller insisted the stairwell room would approve. That's not our policy. We comped the order to avoid delaying the service during peak hour, but it did create confusion in the system. He glanced at me, then at my father, then back to me. We've adjusted it off your folio, Mr. Anderson. My father shifted. Comped? He repeated, a little heat in the word, the way a person reacts to losing control of the scoreboard. No one needs to comp us. We're family. Adam's face remained neutral. We comp when we need to keep service flowing and protect staff from conflict. It's about workflow. Brooke tucked a piece of hair behind her ear with her peacemaking hand. Lucas, if you felt slighted about the room, we can deal with it, she said. You can have ours. We'll take the small one. It's not a big thing. The offer was kind in shape and hollow in center. I could see the calculation behind it, the mental note she had just scribbled to remind herself she attempted fairness. It's not about trading rooms, I said. It's about respect. For the people who work here. For me. For the place we're in. I looked at Aunt Linda. And it's about not turning people into punchlines when they're trying to do their jobs. She waved a hand again, the bracelet chiming. You always take things so seriously, she said. It's a hotel, not a hospital. She laughed lightly. Everyone needs to relax. The housekeeping supervisor knocked softly and stepped in with the manager's nod. Her name tag read Marisol. I knew her attention to detail, knew she trained new hires by folding a bath towel, then unfolding it to show exactly where the crease should lie so it would sit perfectly on the rack. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said. We had an urgent note. The balcony railing in Suite 506 is loose. I sent maintenance, but the guests said they were too busy to allow access. It's a safety issue. We need to secure it tonight. Ethan lifted his hands. We're in the middle of dinner, he said. We'll be back up later. Tomorrow morning's fine. Marisol looked to me, then to Adam, concern threading her voice. We can't leave it until morning if it's loose. She held up a small bag containing 2 long screws and a bracket. These came out. We don't know how. You don't need an investigation to know how balcony screws come out. You need a mental image of a person sitting on it like it's a bar stool for a photo. My father pointed a finger vaguely. If maintenance had done a proper check before guests arrived, he began. Adam cut in gently, refusing to place blame on anyone without evidence. We'll secure it now, he said. Mr. Anderson? His eyes asked a second question. Do you want me to handle this quietly, or do you want to set a standard in front of your family? I felt the room watching. I felt the staff, too, the way they weigh whether leadership will support them when someone decides a policy is optional. Policies aren't fences to keep guests out. They're rails to make sure no one falls. Please coordinate with security, I said to Adam. If the suite can't be accessed, we'll temporarily reassign them to a different room until maintenance is complete. Safety overrides convenience. Ethan laughed, incredulous. You're kidding. We're not moving for a couple of screws. We have a view. Can't your guys just be quick? He turned to Aunt Linda, looking for backup. Tell him, Aunt Elle. We're the paying group here. Aunt Linda nodded firmly, encouraged. Yes, we're not going to uproot everything, she said to Adam, as if issuing a decree to the staff at a banquet she chaired. We have reservations. Reservations come with responsibilities, the manager said calmly. Quiet hours, safety compliance, respect for staff. We apply those consistently. Her tone was even, and because it was even, it held. My father's jaw shifted. Enough, he said. We're getting carried away with rules. We're family. We don't need to go by the book. He looked at me with that old look, the one that says step back. Let me take over. We will end this my way. I met his gaze without moving. We will go by the book, I said. That's why the book exists. Across the table, Brooke's eyes softened. Lucas, she said, quieter now, more to me than to the room. Why didn't you tell us? It wasn't accusatory. It was almost curious. I took a breath. Because I wanted to build something without having to justify every decision, I said. Because I didn't want to hear that playing it safe is small and then, in the next breath, be told to put my card down whenever it was convenient. Because I wanted one area where I wasn't the reliable tool you reach for without thinking. Saying it out loud untied a quiet knot in my chest I had been carrying for a very long time. Silence took a seat at the table with us. The server stepped in lightly to clear a plate and stepped out again, eyes reading the room faster than weather. Aunt Linda recovered first. Well, she chirped brightly. This is all very moving, but we're on vacation. Let's not make it a tribunal. She arranged her napkin, then offered the room a compromise only she could accept. How about this? We keep the rooms as is. We'll sign something about the balcony. Everyone promises to be on their best behavior. And, she smiled toward Adam. We forget the little mix-ups from earlier. Her eyes flicked to the leather folder as if it were a stack of napkins. Adam's phone buzzed once. He glanced at it, then at me. The front desk just notified me, he said carefully. 2 of the cards on file have declined for pre-authorization. It happens, he added quickly, compassionate, factual. We can resolve it easily, but we do need active payment methods on each folio by midnight, per policy. It was a small thing, administrative, uneventful, until the table processed what it meant. Aunt Linda's smile froze, just a hair too long. My father looked annoyed at the idea that the system could deny him anything. Run them again, he said. It's a glitch. Adam nodded. We did, twice, as the system requires. Ethan leaned back, then forward. So what, you're going to kick us out? Over a pre-auth. He looked at me and tipped his chin like he'd found my weak spot. Come on, big man. Don't hide behind policy now. We're your family. The word family landed differently than he intended. It didn't feel like a rope. It felt like a hand pushing. I looked at the security team in the doorway. Not looming, not threatening, simply present. I looked at Marisol holding the small bag of screws. I looked at the manager, steady as bedrock. Then I looked back at the people who raised me and taught me that the world bent when you pressed hard enough. Here's what's going to happen, I said, level and unhurried. Each word light as a glass set precisely on linen. We're going to handle safety first. Suite 506 will be vacated immediately so maintenance can secure the railing. We'll reassign you to another room for the night. Tomorrow, once it's safe, you can return. Second, each room will place their own card on file for incidentals. I'm removing my card from the group. That's standard. Third, there will be no more jokes at the expense of the staff or each other's rooms. If anyone has a request, you'll ask kindly. If anyone has a complaint, you'll bring it to the front desk like adults. I paused, not to threaten, but to let the shape of the evening become clear. If that's not agreeable, we'll end your stay early and process checkouts tonight. Aunt Linda sputtered. Lucas, she said, as if my name were a lever she could pull to reset me. You can't be serious. We drove hours. We have plans. We made a reservation. Brooke stared at her hands, then looked up at me with a question that wasn't about rooms. My father's eyes went cool with a pressure I recognized. You're enjoying this, he said. The accusation slid across the table like a coin. You've waited your whole life to have the upper hand. He leaned in. That's not leadership. That's pettiness. I'm not enjoying this, I said softly, and I wasn't. I spent a year making sure strangers felt welcome here. I won't let my own family make it smaller than it is. Ethan's chair scraped slightly as he stood halfway, then sank back down, torn between theater and calculation. Fine, he said, reaching for his keycard, then tossing it back on the table. Move us. But we're not apologizing for having fun on vacation. He looked toward the door, raising his chin. Are we done? The manager nodded once to security, not as a signal to remove anyone, but as a cue to prepare to guide. They stepped a fraction closer, hands open, posture neutral. Adam's phone buzzed again. He glanced down, then up, and the lines around his eyes tightened. We also have a complaint from a neighboring room about noise and something thrown over the balcony earlier, he said, voice still calm. Housekeeping recovered a broken glass near the courtyard planters. Security logged it at 5:22 p.m. He looked at Ethan's side of the table, not accusatory, just aligning facts. The room held its breath. My mother closed her eyes for a second, the way a person prays without words. When she opened them, she looked at me, not pleading, not defending, but steady. Do what you need to do, she said quietly. I stood. Not a performance, a posture. Adam, I said, please reassign Suite 506 and coordinate maintenance. Manager, thank you. Marisol, if you need anything from me, you have it. Security will escort whoever is moving to their temporary rooms and help with bags. I turned back to the table. Cards on file by midnight. That isn't a threat. It's a requirement. If anyone needs time to sort their accounts, the front desk can hold a cash deposit or process a different card. But it has to be handled tonight. Aunt Linda's face was very still now, the way stillness sometimes disguises a wild flurry beneath. "You're humiliating us," she whispered. "In front of strangers." I shook my head. "I'm asking you to be guests," I said. "Same as anyone else. That's the only way this works." My father pushed back his chair an inch, the sound louder than any of our voices. "You've made your point," he said, rising just enough to feel taller. "We'll decide what we're doing. We'll let you know." He reached for his coat, then realized he had none. The gesture looked strange without the weight of it. The manager gestured gently toward the hall. "We can show you to your reassigned room, sir," she said. She did not soften the sir. Ethan rolled his eyes and stood. "Let's go," he told Brooke, who hadn't moved. She looked at me, then at our mother, then at the staff, and I saw a map unfold in her expression. How this could go in two directions, how either one would be a story we told for years. She stood, finally, but didn't take a step. In the doorway, the security team made a small space for movement. The hotel hummed in the background, the way good hotels do, a choreography of 100 small kindnesses no one notices until they're gone. Adam waited for my cue and for the family's choice to catch up to the reality already in motion. For a long second, the room was a held breath, the kind you take before stepping into cold water, the kind you take before saying something that cannot be unsaid. Then a knock came at the dining room door. 1, 2, 3, firm and measured. The night auditor leaned in, a folder in his hands, concern in his eyes. "Excuse me," he said. "Mr. Anderson, there's an additional matter related to the group booking I think you'll want to see before we proceed." He held the folder just inside the threshold, not crossing, waiting for permission to bring the next truth into the room. Adam's eyes met mine. The manager's posture shifted barely, ready for whatever line we were about to cross. My family watched me like a jury that had suddenly realized the verdict wasn't the ending, but the start of something else entirely. I walked toward the door to take the folder, the room's quiet following me like a tide, and as my hand closed around the cardstock, I heard Ethan exhale a small laugh and say, to no one and to everyone, "What now?" The folder the night auditor handed me was slim but heavy with weight. Inside was a printout of the group booking details, the kind of paperwork most guests never see. At the top, under Purpose of Stay, Aunt Linda had written in her neat, looping script, "Charity Retreat, Verified Nonprofit, Tax-Exempt Group." Attached was a scanned form, her signature at the bottom, claiming we were hosting an educational seminar. It was the kind of form that grants a discounted block of rooms and exempts certain fees. Except I knew without looking too hard that it was fiction. There was no charity registered under the name she scribbled. I handed the page to Adam, who had already guessed its contents. His eyes met mine, calm and ready. My father craned his neck to read. "That's standard," he said quickly, as if filling the silence before anyone else could. "We're a large family. Families are charitable." He forced a smile at the manager. "It's all the same in spirit." The manager did not return the smile. "Fraudulent use of tax-exempt status is not permitted," she said evenly. "We would normally assess full charges immediately and terminate the booking." Aunt Linda's face flushed pink. "It's just paperwork," she protested. "I've been arranging family trips for years. No one cares about the fine print. Everyone bends the truth a little. You can't expect me to," she trailed off, realizing the sentence had no safe end. Ethan leaned forward. "Come on, Lucas. You're really going to throw us out? Over paperwork?" He laughed, too sharp. "You own the place. Just make it disappear. Who's going to know?" I looked at him for a long moment. Years of being the quiet one had given me the ability to watch without flinching. "I'll know," I said softly. The weight of the room shifted again. My mother's fork slipped against her plate, the sound small but final. Brooke pressed her lips together, then spoke for the first time with something close to steel. "We're embarrassing ourselves," she said. Her voice cut through Aunt Linda's sputtering and Ethan's grins. "This isn't about a balcony or a room. It's about us thinking we can do whatever we want and expecting Lucas to carry it." For a moment, I thought she might side with them, soften the edges, propose another compromise. But she stayed quiet after that, and the quiet carried more truth than any toast. Adam cleared his throat gently. Per policy, Mr. Anderson, we'll need to resolve the charges tonight. Would you like us to proceed with checkouts? I took a breath. I remembered every small slight, every whispered laugh when I wasn't meant to hear, every time I had nodded along to keep the peace. I thought about the crooked towel rack, how even small things mattered if you wanted a place to feel right. Yes, I said. Process the checkouts. Effective immediately. The words did not come out with anger. They came out with clarity. The reaction was immediate. Aunt Linda slapped her napkin on the table, sputtering about betrayal. My father pushed back his chair so hard it nearly toppled, insisting he wouldn't be humiliated in front of strangers. Ethan muttered something about power trips and started gathering his phone and keys with jerky movements. Brooke just stayed seated, her hands folded. My mother's eyes glistened, not with tears, but with something heavier, recognition, maybe, of the years she hadn't seen me fully. Security stepped forward, not forceful, just steady, professional. They guided my relatives toward the hallway, offering assistance with bags. Aunt Linda refused with a hiss. Ethan made a show of dragging his feet. My father walked with stiff dignity, as if he could still make the corridor his stage. The dining room grew quiet again. Guests at nearby tables glanced over, then looked away. Adam remained by the door, giving them space but not yielding an inch. The manager stood tall, clipboard in hand, documenting as we had trained. When the last of them was escorted out, I sat back down at the long table. The plates were half cleared, the wine glasses half full. Brooke was the only one still seated across from me. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly. Yes, I did. She nodded slowly. I think you're right. Then she pushed her chair back, stood, and left, not with the bluster of the others, but with the silence of someone who wasn't ready to bridge the gap yet. I was alone in the dining room. For the first time all weekend, I felt at ease. Not triumphant, just steady. The kind of steady that comes when you stop apologizing for the space you take up. The manager stepped closer. Would you like us to block their names in the system for future stays? She asked. Yes, I said. Do that. No future bookings under their names or under my card. If they want to stay, they'll have to come as guests, not as family demanding favors. Adam nodded. Understood. That night, after the paperwork was processed and the staff dismissed, I walked the quiet hallways of the hotel. I checked the stairwell room where I'd been placed. I adjusted the towel rack with my own hands, tightening it so it wouldn't wobble. I looked out the small window at the rooftop, and I smiled. This room was mine too, in its way, just as much as the ocean suite, just as much as the lobby. The next morning, as sunlight spread over the water, guests came down for breakfast. Families laughed over waffles, couples leaned close over coffee, children pointed at gulls outside. The place hummed with the quiet joy I had built into it. My phone buzzed with a message from Brooke. I'm sorry for the things I said before. Call me when you're ready. I put the phone back in my pocket and stepped into the dining room. The staff greeted me not with surprise, not with hesitation, but with the same warmth they gave every guest. I belonged here, not because of my last name, not because of any title, but because I had built it with care. And when I looked out over the tables, hearing the low music and the clink of dishes, I felt something I hadn't in years. Not anger, not vindication, just peace. That was enough.